Roll call first. Ann?
Board Member Bartline? Here. Board Member Bolt? Board Member Duzan? Board Member Elrod?
Here.
Board Member Graham?
Here.
Board Member Moore? Board Member Rudnicki?
Here.
Board Member Samuelson?
Here.
And Board Member Schroeder.
Here.
Quorum.
Do we have a quorum?
You do have a quorum.
Oh, okay. So tonight, actually, I want to introduce Ed Schroeder. He's a new board member, so thank you, Ed, for joining. And LaDonna is sitting up here with us as well, since we have Randy, Carrie, and David not here. So LaDonna, welcome to the hot seat. Okay, so this today for the agenda, let me just bring it up. I think we have the minutes from August 26th. Motion to approve.
Motion to approve. Second.
Okay. Oh, so where is Ed on the board? Who is he? He's going to be more today?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Any unscheduled appearances? Anybody want to speak to the board? Okay. And on tonight's agenda, we have the Overlook Plateau preliminary plat for 4390 West Jameson Place.
Good evening, Planning Board. I'm Andrea Mimnaugh, the planning staff. The application before you is a preliminary plat to create 10 lots for single-family development on 2.5 acres known as the Overlook Plateau. The property is located within the existing Overlook PD plan, which is located off of Mineral Avenue between Santa Fe and Platte Canyon. And looking at the area reference map, you can see that the property is nestled between South Overlook Way and the Nevada Ditch. The Overlook PD plan includes this property and also the 52 existing housing units along the Overlook Plateau Drive loop. The Overlook PD was approved in 1997, and the overall property was divided into two parcels, a 17-acre parcel for 52 homes, and a 2.5-acre parcel for the eventual development of an additional 10 homes. The smaller parcel was set aside for the original owner of the property, John Todd, so he could continue living in his home. He resided there until his death in 2011. And now, Jameson Patio Homes has purchased the property with the intent to develop single-family homes consistent with the provisions of the PD plan that's already in place. The proposed preliminary plat includes 10 building lots. They range in size from 6,969 square feet to 15,295 square feet. A private gated street serves lots, and as you can see, the street would be constructed on private property. That's the area that's highlighted in yellow on the screen. In other words, the street would be overlaid across the lots, and an access easement would be established for the entire width and length of the street, and it would be maintained by the homeowners association. Within the overall land development process, there are generally three phases. The first phase is zoning, which establishes land uses, density, and development standards. And following that phase is the platting process. The purpose of the platting process is to create lots, right-of-way, and easements. And then the third phase of development is the building permit process. For the Overlook Plateau, the zoning for the entire property, including the subject parcel, was established at the time of the Overlook PD Plan in 1997. With the current application, only the plat is under review. The process is okay, missing a slide, but we'll just go over it anyway. The process for the preliminary plat is that it is approved by the planning board, and then the final plat, which includes civil construction plans and a subdivider's improvement agreement, is approved by City Council. So for a preliminary plat, the city must determine that it is in compliance with city regulations, any applicable approved plans, and outside agencies that may be impacted by the development. The staff has completed an analysis for the proposed Overlook Plateau, and that's included in your staff report. And just to summarize, it is in compliance with the provisions of the subdivision code in that it was prepared by a registered surveyor and includes the information needed to assess the proposed plat. The proposed plat is in compliance with the Overlook at Platte Valley PD Plan in that it meets the specified minimum lot size, the open space, and setback requirements. And with respect to the comprehensive plan, the overall PD plan for the site was found to be in compliance when it was approved in 1997. The plat is in compliance with the existing proposed development in that part of the Overlook PD plan, which represents a unified site design for the entire property. And finally, the outside agencies affected by the proposed development were referred copies of the application, and all have responded that there are no concerns with the proposed development. So in conclusion, staff finds that the proposed Overlook Plateau conforms to all applicable city requirements for preliminary plat and is recommending that Planning Board approve the application, and a proposed motion reflecting this recommendation is included in your staff report.
Thank you. I'm going to hold the questions until after the applicant, so I'll have the applicant come up now.
Good evening. I'll try to make this short so you can get back to the football game. So my name is William S. Lyons, Jr. I have a company called Creekside Communities. We currently have 9 projects throughout the whole metro area. And what I'm focusing on in most of these communities, at least 7 out of the 9, is what we call patio homes. Now, my definition of a patio home is a single-family home, single-story, typically with an HOA designed for the empty nester. And you could probably ask staff, but I know in other communities that we're building, this is a segment of the market that's not really being dealt with as appropriately as it should. You know, there's 10,000 people a day turning 65 as of this last January. And so what I've been trying to do is find little infill parcels where people who live in the same community can come buy the single story because their knees are maybe giving out, or their hips, or they don't want to take care of the lawn any longer, and they're finally retired. And quite often, maybe 20% of the time, they plan on retiring. What I have here is various different boards, some of which shows pictures of the homes, some are brochures of other projects that are the same. And what we're doing, when I call them high-end, they're tile roofs, all stucco, stone or brick, or a combination thereof. There's no siding on them. And within the HOA, we take care of both the front and rear yard landscaping, the snow removal, the trash, those types of things. So what many of our buyers, or what they call it, is a lock and leave, where they can go away for a month, visit family down in Arizona during the wintertime or something like that, where the home, the landscaping, all that type of thing would be taken care of. Inside the homes are 8-foot-high doors, granite countertops. Every single countertop in the whole house is of granite. And what we're trying to provide here within each community, so people who live in Littleton don't have to go out to, I'll say, the farther suburbs to try to find that type of environment. And what they actually like is, because of this particular project, not all of them are, but I try whenever I possibly can, to have a gated community. We have some, probably 15% of the buyers are widows. who move out a little bit larger house, move off a half acre, who don't want to deal with the yard any longer. But while the gate doesn't guarantee anything, they do appreciate that little additional sense of security. I'm available for any questions you might have, but I have in this one particular board right here, you might notice, the properties are not even listed as of yet, and we actually have 2 reservations. They would be contracts if they were legal descriptions. We have Vanna White here. And so, but because the plat isn't actually recorded as of yet, we can't actually take a contract. The one gentleman lives, is it 2 doors down? Yes. 2 doors down, right from the property. And one gentleman and his wife came from a broker who went to a project of our location on Platte Canyon and Coal Mine, but we were sold out. And so she searched us out and found out that we were building here, and so there's another ones that people have a reservation on. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay. I'll open up for questions. Any questions from the board members to the applicant or staff?
How is the property positioned to the other people who presently occupy Overlook, or what I would call Overlook, that subdivision? How is it initially positioned to them, and then what happened now?
If I understand your question, this exhibit right here, sir, shows the lots. These lots are a little bit larger than the surrounding homes. Let me see if this works. If you notice, there's 3 homes here, and on the existing surrounding there's 4, and the same thing across the front.
So were those people, when they bought their homes, made aware that this was the general game plan?
Well, it was 20 years ago, so I have no idea. I wasn't involved with it at that point in time. I can tell you we attended a HOA meeting, and staff is, when people hear about what's sort of going on, staff had sent us numerous emails, well, numerous, maybe 3, and we communicated with all those people, and I think staff will tell you themselves. One gentleman wanted a larger setback, and we were able to accommodate him. One person was worried about the trees, and we told him the best we possibly can, we'll save the trees along that particular property line. So I think the neighborhood's, well, Janelle, I mean, does that answer your question, sir?
Yeah. Is there anybody from the neighborhood here this evening? Okay.
Did you have comments from any of the neighbors to the east, across the ditch?
Nothing other than one person's interested in buying. That's the only comment that I'm aware of.
And
Go ahead.
South Overlook Way, is that a private street or public? The main entry, main street? Right here, sir? Yes.
No, that's a public street.
Okay. This might be a better question for staff, but variance required for a gate?
No, we've met with the fire department. In fact, I have a letter in the file that says that they've already approved the location, the dimensions. There's numerous gates within the city, gated communities within the city of Littleton. And who's the gentleman we met with? Tim Stover.
Is this road serving the 10 units going to be a private street, or will that also be a public street?
Private street, sir.
Will be a private. Okay.
LaDonna or Ed, any questions?
I was just wondering, since it's a gated community, is it also walled? I mean, is it set completely separate from the community?
No, it'll have around the perimeter, it'll have a 6-foot fence like all the other neighbors typically have. There's existing right now. Fencing goes all along here. We plan, because there's views here, we plan on putting wrought iron there, and then whatever's not 6-foot fence here already, we will complete with a 6-foot fence.
What about along the street, the public street?
Yes, ma'am. There'll be a fence along there as well.
Is there monumentation? I'm sorry. Is there
Yes,
some
sir.
monumentation at the front where you
Yes,
enter
sir.
with a subdivision name, or just some?
It's the Overlook Plateau, it's called.
Okay.
One other question. Lots 7, 8, and 9, will they be accessible from Overlook Way or from the private street?
From the private street.
There's, it appears there's an easement coming from West Jamison into the property now. Will that easement be vacated, or what's the?
I'm not sure what easement,
Coming off of West Jamison to get to the current, no, up right there. Is
there won't be access from there.
no access from
No,
there?
sir.
Is that still part of this parcel?
Yeah, it is presently, but it'll end up being deeded either to Denver Water or to the city of Littleton, whoever wants it. But I think both have expressed that.
So your property will end right there at that fence line where you, on the backside of those properties? Yeah,
Yes, sir.
okay. And the buildings that are on there now being torn down, there's a building that appears to be outside this subject to lot?
Yeah, there's actually three. There's a home and then two outbuildings. Those will all be coming down.
What's your price point? Where do you think your
We're
price
starting
point
in
will
the
be?
900s.
Nines. Finished.
Yes, sir.
I have a couple of questions. What's the average square footage where it runs from the smallest to the biggest?
The square footage of the homes are from 4,167 square feet to 4,575 square feet.
Okay. And then once development starts, when do you expect that it would be complete?
Worst case, I believe, would be 18 months, but we're shooting for 14 or 15.
And I actually have I'll have a question. I think it's for staff, but while we're looking at the plotting here, the open space, setbacks, things like that, that were part of the original PD plan, how do we assess, is there enough open space as originally intended?
Yes, the setbacks, the building envelopes are shown on the preliminary plat, and so you can see the building area that is, that would be available for the builder to build within. And as for other things such as parking and open space, that would be worked through at the building permit stage. And so we will be looking for the 50% requirement at that point.
Okay. Thank you.
One more. What is the estimated traffic impact generated? I'm sure it's minimal, but
10 trips per house per day. Now, the empty nesters, one, they're gone quite often, and two, they don't have any teenage kids at home driving cars. So it's in most cities, it's very well preferred kind of a density.
okay. And is there a light at the end of the street there? I can't recall.
Onto Mineral?
The stop sign.
Mineral, there's a stop sign?
Yes, sir.
Left turn access or just right turn access at that point?
Well, let me make sure I know what you're talking about.
No, all the way at the street there.
No, there's no light there. No.
The light.
Yeah.
Is there a gap in the street?
It was designed, and staff could confirm this, but it was designed for all the homes back when. It's actually a 3-lane highway each way.
Right.
And so it has a very good and clear access.
Have you already determined which models would be built on which lots?
Well, the good news is numerous floor plans could fit on various different lots. So it really sort of depends on how the market will tell us. You know, if somebody wants a smaller home, they can have that. If they want the larger one, they can have that.
In the smaller lot, you think that'll be the 2-story model?
Yeah, lot 9, is it lot?
The smaller with
Yes.
lot 5, 6,900 square feet?
Yes, sir. Yeah,
Probably
there'll be
2-story.
9 single stories and then 1 2-story.
But that 2-story, you haven't determined where that will be?
Yes, sir.
It will be in the lot 5? Okay.
We could have placed it anywhere along there, but because usually the neighbors love it, they were building single stories next to them, and so that's why we actually pushed that one in, so it wouldn't be next to the. So, you know, we try to be the good neighbor, as they say.
Right. Okay.
Your patio home square footage is quite large for patio homes. Is that on 2 levels, including
Yes,
basement?
it's a finished basement that we put in.
Okay, that's not.
But we put 9 and 10-foot ceilings in the basements.
All right.
Any other questions? Okay. Do we have a motion?
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll make the motion.
Chair, I move that the Planning Board Resolution Number 1309 for the preliminary plat for the Overlook Plateau subdivision be approved.
Second?
Second.
Did I second?
Discussion?
To vote.
Vote.
Aye.
Okay.
All in favor?
Thank you.
Guess we're done. I forgot that.
Sorry.
Not that there was any discussion.
You guys usually speak up if there is.
Discussion was,
Can I
sounds
catch my breath for a minute?
good. Looks like a nice idea.
No, these are yours.
I voted permanently in.
Board members, I thought I would introduce Denise Stevens, who's our Economic Development Director. She's been on staff for almost a year. 1 year tomorrow.
Wow.
So, yes, and so I thought she has a quick presentation about her department and what they do and what they're doing going forward. So I'll turn it over to Denise.
Good evening, board members. Again, I'm Denise Stevens, Director of Economic Development. Just so you know a little bit about me, I've been a business owner 3 times. I've owned 2 service businesses and a retail business. I spent a little over 2 years as the finance manager for the Jefferson Economic Council. After that, I was hired as the executive director of the Jefferson County Business Resource Center. Did that for about 7 years, and that was based on the model that was created here in Littleton. So when I heard that this position was open, I really was excited about coming to work here. So most of what we do is about business retention and expansion, but we also now handle business attraction and retail reinvestment. A big part of retention is continuous outreach. We actually have a database with all our businesses included, and so we do frequent emails to our businesses to let them know about the services that we provide to them at no cost. We also have 4 sessions a year that are business education sessions, lunch and learn sessions with relevant topics for business growth. We do presentations to different business association groups, and then we schedule as frequently as possible direct contact with business owners where we talk to them about what they do to grow their businesses and what we might be able to do to help them as well. Just a brief list of some of the pretty extraordinary resources that we have. We can do very complex GIS business mapping. We have access to a number of different databases that will allow us to do demographic and expenditure analysis. We can do in-depth market research and look at competitor analysis, industry trends, and one of the biggest things that we do is a website analysis for businesses, and we also can help them with social media strategy, and we help them make connections in the business community. We also have started developing recruitment strategies for companies that are hiring specialized employees. As far as business attraction goes, we have just in the last year started answering site selection inquiries. These come down from the state and they pass through Denver Metro Economic Development Corporation and come through to the rest of the economic developers and chambers in the area. So we respond to those. We can use the same tools that we use for business retention for those site selection inquiries. We can produce labor force information, demographic and expenditure information. Also, we can look at available properties and provide those brochures. And we've done a comprehensive chart of tax requirements for this area. And then a big part of what we were trying to do with the retail reinvestment strategy is we are becoming educated on what retail investors are looking for, what larger retailers are looking for. So we have become acquainted with what is required these days, and little by little we're making connections with people in those communities. One of the things we started with is we did a complete inventory of our existing shopping centers, which includes photographs, aerial maps, ownership information, the size of those properties, and we can include with that, again, tax information and labor force information. And when we have contact with a reinvestment company, then we can take a look at the various properties in the city and forward that information to them. We were also asked to create the framework for the economic plan, and that's what's sitting in front of you there. The way we began was we took a look at the components that are required for a sustainable community. And then we took a look at our citizen surveys, both for residential input and business input. We looked at Inspire Littleton, we talked to staff, and we looked at the council goals, and we found common ground. So we identified the assets that were shared by all of those. And we also took a look at the priorities, and I won't read all of these to you, but where you see red is where we've actually done some things to address those specific priorities. Council also gave us the opportunity to start a revitalization grant. So what we did was we framed this similar to what Rich has had success doing along their 38th Avenue corridor. We have had good success with our first round of applications. We had a little bit of money left over, so we've gone out for a second round, but we're sure that we will award all of that money and make some pretty notable impacts with that. Also, we have looked at the housing piece of what we're trying to do, and we've developed information for those who are looking to live in Littleton, and that will be on a website that we're creating. We're also working with Kay on the senior housing situation and the options available to the seniors in the community. And then finally, we're taking a look at what the state has provided for various opportunities, such as health and wellness. We have that natural cluster in South Park, technology and information, the creative industries, tourism, and also looking at facilitating a brand for the downtown area, since it is one of our economic engines. And that's it. Did you have any questions?
Do you have I'm sorry, go ahead.
Fire away.
A blog or an email or a list on how you keep track or get information out to citizens? Is there anything like that you're doing right now?
Well, we are launching in about 2 days a business website called Go to Littleton, and it's going to include a comprehensive business directory, business events calendar. It will have a commercial property search site and a residential property search site, and that a piece of that will be a blog. Currently, the way we communicate is mainly to the businesses through our database that has opt-ins for communications. And we'll certainly include the citizens with that blog when we have that site launched.
Thanks.
Well, let's see. I think sometime this decade we'll be completing our comprehensive plan and having it approved, hopefully.
Good to hear. Time's on our side.
Yes. Editorial comment. Afterwards, I assume we're going to be looking at developing some more corridor studies and revising existing corridor studies. That's kind of on our agenda. Question I have for you is, well, in the past, we've developed corridor studies kind of in a vacuum without real input from the business community. It always seemed to bother me, like, okay, we're on high, we developed the plans, never getting any input, it seems. This time around, and maybe you can spearhead this when we start developing these corridor studies involving the business and retail community to a greater extent, I think it would help the studies immensely.
Well, we're very interested in that, and Michael has communicated to us different mechanisms, online mechanisms for including all of the stakeholders in the process. So, I mean, at least from a sensibility standpoint, in my world, you need to involve all of the stakeholders so that you have good input from everyone.
Yes,
So,
citizens as well as business.
correct. And some of these online mechanisms make sure that you reach out to all of those people, citizens and businesses alike. So we'll definitely include that.
I assume you have lists of every single business in the community and up and down the corridors.
We have a very comprehensive list. We have made improvements because we've introduced a more comprehensive business license, and that's going to give us a little more information, and it's very clear that anyone operating any kind of business in the city does complete this form. So then that improves the information that we take in, and our communication with the finance department will fan out our list. But right now we have about 2,400 businesses in our database.
One other thing, since I'm a sole proprietor working out of my abode, do you have a comprehensive list of all of us?
We don't, and part of that has been that in the past, the message that we had was that if you were somebody who needed to complete a sales use tax application, then that's what we asked for. Home-based businesses or people that were just providing services were not, until now, asked to complete that information form, but now everyone is asked to. There's no charge for it, and it's just to kind of make it so that we have a comprehensive database and can outreach to everyone.
It'd be nice to, obviously it's becoming the future. We're all consultants basically when we're in an economic downturn. Everybody's consultant, but the only time the city has ever contacted me in 20 years is they had their hand out looking for money, and I had to prove to them that I had paid the sales tax on my equipment or whatever.
Well, that's not our objective.
It wasn't real friendly.
What we want is we want to know about people like you so that we can include you in the directory if you so choose, and so that we can provide our resources to you as well.
I mean, I get the Littleton economic notes, which is very helpful. So
Yes, I'm glad to hear that. Anything else?
Kind of along the same lines, I own a business, and the one thing that would make me happy, and I will second Mark's comment, the only time I ever hear from the government is when they want money. What have we done to say thank you to the existing businesses that are here, the existing proprietors? A letter from the mayor, a letter from the city manager, something that just says we appreciate that you're here. Have we taken any action along those lines?
Not that I know of, not comprehensively. I mean, we do outreach fairly frequently and talk to people, and this website is pretty much something that we're doing specifically to help promote businesses, but that's an excellent idea, and we can certainly take it up with the mayor.
It's a very simple thing, and to avoid the crass analogy, but kiss me first before you ask me the rest of the questions. And it would be, I think it would go a long way, just speaking as a business owner, not in Littleton, but I think it would go a long way for the goodwill there. We're in an apartment boom right now. Everybody and their brother wants to open an apartment, and the word on the street is there's a retail boom that usually follows if history is the guide. How prepared is Littleton right now from a retail perspective, and what actions can we take in order to make sure that we can capitalize on the next boom?
Well, we have been using our own resources to kind of do an analysis of various areas. And like I said, we've created this inventory of available retail properties. And we're becoming educated on what's required, what they're looking for, if there's a gap between the cost of their project and what they need to do things. So we're just kind of moving into this arena for the first time, but I think we're pretty well prepared because, like I say, we've got some fundamental information. We're building relationships with people that will look at retail in this area, and then we have the tools that we have compared against national retail analysis firms, and we're pretty consistent in what we realize through those reports. So.
Personal opinion, what is your opinion about taking existing retail space and transforming it into density or housing? Is that a plus, a negative, or a neutral to you?
If the property has traditionally not done well as a retail space, and the property owner is inclined toward a different use, I'm hard-pressed to argue with the property owner, but I will, if asked, provide information that would show if there is a sustainable opportunity for retail, because I realize how important that is to our budget. I think our major opportunities lie with these companies who talk about pent-up desire to reinvest in retail, so that we have these declining areas, and there are people out there with a lot of money, and there are a few people that are willing to invest in retail sites that don't have an anchor, that are not power centers. They would look at some of the retail properties that we have and keep them retail but improve them. So that's kind of where we're leaning.
So everything is case-by-case dependent, of course.
Yes.
But is there a long-term economic downside to accepting an apartment building over the potential of retail, or is that just a roll of the dice we have to take every time we make a decision?
I really think it has to be looked at on a case-by-case basis. I think that you could probably do an analysis with current and possibly future projects that would be multifamily housing and sort of gauge when you might hit a saturation point. You know, I have personal opinions, but I think that what you're always looking for is a balance between those rooftops that will feed that retail and very good retail projects. So mainly our focus is on trying to reinvest in the existing retail.
Excellent. And forgive my badgering here, but
No.
I'm kind of, you helped me think something through. Will the city be doing more detailed analysis as it's presented to us on an apartment versus a commercial use that will greater defend or not defend a retail opportunity that is being asked to be rezoned? We'd rarely see information from an economic development side from the city on that. Can we start to expect more of that?
We are certainly able to do that, and we'll do that anytime you ask for it.
Let me bring up the example. We'll have a developer come in and say, gee, my shopping center is not performing, never has. Basically, they buy a $10 gallon of paint and paint it every few years and consider it to be upgraded. No vision, no real effort to market it or to sell out and move on. And so we have to judge, is it really a retail site that is miszoned and needs to be rezoned to heavy-duty residential, or is it the latter, just a lack of vision, a lot of lack of effort? I guess the point is, it'd be nice to have you as the expert giving testimony as to which is which, giving your opinion.
Well, a lot of times you're dealing with issues that could be remedied. Maybe they have signage problems. Maybe their facade is old and declining. Maybe they don't do the proper diligence to find the right tenants. So part of what we're trying to do is reach out to the merchants that occupy these centers to see if we can assist them. I mean, I speak from being a tenant in a retail center that a lot of property owners are not very concerned with their tenant mix or their tenants, and a lot of times what we can do is go in and help those tenants, or maybe we can point out the things that can be easily remedied to improve the center. An example would be that very few of our shopping centers have what I call a virtual marquee, a simple website that would at least let you find the businesses that exist within that center. And some of these things could be easily remedied if we could get the ear of the property owner.
That's good on a that's all in good on a day-to-day basis, trying to obviously improve our retail and commercial base. But I'm talking more of when we get a case coming in where the developer is talking one tune, and what do we have to counterbalance that, or to give an opposite opinion, if there is an opposite opinion, as to is this correct, or is he just not trying? And so, hey, gee, have economic hardship, give us a rezone.
Well, I do think that right now that there is a trend to invest in multifamily housing, but I also think that we can provide information like larger entities that look at retail about what gaps there may be in the retail that is provided in the area. So there is information, and we can certainly provide it to you. We can provide it to developers if they're, and that is kind of how we lean. If they're looking for just multifamily housing on what has been previously a commercial property, we try to make a case for at least including some commercial on that property.
And if I could just add one thing, I guess when it comes to rezoning, you know, you're kind of bound by the code to do it consistent with the comprehensive plan. And I think if you know all the criteria, the economic viability is maybe 1 out of a dozen, perhaps. So it is something we look at, but we don't present it as this is the answer, I guess, ultimately.
To that end, though, if we were to say the 7 underperforming Safeways, have we as a city sat down and said, here's an example of things we think could work in those 7 empty Safeways? Or maybe not the anchor itself, but the other stores accordingly?
A lot of property owners have access to this information anyway, so they either hire outside consultants or they have access and they form their own conclusions. Retail's a really tricky business right now. It's very hard to pull in grocery anchors. It's even harder to pull in other brand kinds of retailers. They're regional in their approach to things. So a lot of what needs to be done, I think, with some of these centers is to take a look at a more viable mix of retailers that are not brand retailers. Just the simple answer is that a lot of regional retailers are not going to be attracted to Littleton. There are a lot of barriers.
Why?
It has to do with regional demographics, proximity of other successful retail areas such as Streets of South Glen, stuff that's coming up in Highlands. And then I can tell you from talking to different developers who have commercial pads that are trying to bring in retailers is that they're reaching out. They have the contacts, but they're not getting a lot of bite. And part of that is that these retail reinvestors are saying that nobody really wants to do any ground-up construction. They're looking for existing sites that they can utilize.
LaDonna, I know you had some questions. I'll let you go ahead.
Well, one of my questions had to do with the discussion going on down here, and, you know, from a city perspective, would there be kind of an overall overlay map where you might say areas of reinvestment? You know, those are kind of blueprint type planning ideas, but, you know, just to talk about certain areas of corridors or corners or things like that, or areas of reinvestment, meaning that you're more likely to get inquiries from interested retail developers on certain parcels than others. And this kind of gets to that thing of, is there a higher commercial use for a given property, or is it great the way it is, or is it a property that may not have any better, I don't know how to phrase it to you properly other than to say that if you had inquiries about certain areas, then they would be areas of opportunity, whereas if we historically have not had inquiries around certain areas, then they might not ever be looked at. So
That's true, and that's kind of why we started this inventory, so that we could find these people that would invest in some properties that may not have a grocery anchor, may not be ideal, and then we can kind of show them what's available there and see if they would be interested in it. We have a lot of commercial space that's office use. We don't have a whole lot of industrial or flex space, and we find out what people are asking for through these site selection inquiries, and we can't answer with a lot of properties because of what people are looking for, but we can address the possibility of retail reinvestment. So that's, and we're just moving into that area, so that's been my general approach, is to inventory it and know who's looking to invest, and then just show them properties that they might be interested in. So I don't know if that really answers it, but my focus is trying to validate this as a retail use.
Well, if even you track the areas of interest, I think it's informative to us, just to kind of exchange that kind of information. And then the other is just based on what you were just talking about, that a lot of the retails aren't interested in Littleton. I mean, what would we have to do as a community to have the right demographics to have more retail interest here? Is it, what is it specifically?
Well, we're kind of taking a look at some consulting firms and seeing if they can do some preliminary analysis for us to see if it kind of adds up the way our reports have added up. I don't want to sound negative because I think there's a lot of possibility, but the bottom line is that retailers, the people that represent the big, large, and I'm not even talking about the big box stores, I'm talking about larger retailers or desirable grocery stores like Whole Foods. They have very specific things they want in mind. And for instance, proximity to other similar stores is prohibitive. Street barriers. So we've got these major thoroughfares that serve as barriers for a lot of retail. So Santa Fe and C470 and Broadway, those are all things that they all look at. How easy is it going to be for people from other communities to cross over those barriers to utilize these particular retail products? And a lot of them are looking to land in the place where you're going to draw the same demographics. So you'll see this at Aspen Grove. If they want Forever 21, then Forever 21 wants other similar kinds of stores that would draw that demographic, because then they're going to have these people in the same vicinity. So it's not a simple matter, and it's not even necessarily something that we could address as a city, because it's all about regional opportunity. So it's mainly seeing if we can get people with this pent-up money to come in and look at our existing declining centers and see if they could do something that would actually generate more money and more interest. At least that's what I've found so far.
How are you reaching these, or how are you aware of these people with pent-up money? So, call it lead generation, I don't know what to call it, but like how are you, I heard you say that you're reaching out. So how are we as a city actively looking for those opportunities? And
well, to give you an example, every year Holland and Hart offers a retail conference, and at that conference they have panels of retail investors and companies that finance these kinds of developments. And you get lists of them, and you give them your card, and you contact them, and you tell them what's available in your community, and to get back in touch with you if there is interest. And now we're finally actually getting calls from these people calling our offices saying, what's available and what opportunities exist there. So it's kind of slow, but it's networking in that community. And those opportunities arise more often now. So we go and we participate and we introduce ourselves. So
I think what I'm hearing you say is understanding what the needs are of these reinvestment. But I think what we need to be prepared for is, and how do we develop the product to, sell to them? So whether it's, I don't know if we can do that through zoning, through some of the decisions that we make on what we do develop and how and to what density. So anything that you can help us, provide some guidelines of here are the things that we do need to do as a city. And again, I don't think you could do a broad stroke, you do this all the time, but where there is pockets or areas of interest, how do we begin to develop that area to, again, make it more and more appealing for some of that reinvestment?
sure, and we'll keep you informed. We'll keep looking at it. It's, economic trends change and retailers change. You probably are aware all of the big box retailers are downsizing. Their footprints are half or even less of what they used to be, and a lot of them are retrofitting locations. And that's just been something that's occurred in about the last 18 months. So it's really important to kind of stay involved and continue to research and, again, keep reaching out to the people that made those decisions.
One more thing. We've been talking a lot about retail. and I haven't read this through, but what about just services outside of retail, so other types of businesses? Is that addressed here in economic development?
Well, at least to this point, what we do mostly is to try to retain and grow those service-based businesses. We work with different high-tech companies and then service providers to help them expand their market, find financing if they need it. It's all depending on those particular kinds of businesses and what they need.
So that's more of a, I heard you say, retention strategy as
Retention
opposed to
and
retail as the
expansion.
acquisition strategy?
Well, it's more of an attraction and expansion.
I have a question. For the shopping centers, declining shopping centers, are there examples of either similar communities or similar places where you're unable to attract anchor stores or quality anchor stores that people have been able to make those centers successful? And if we looked at that, what that mix would be if there are?
I was pretty familiar with all of the cities in Jefferson County, and this, again, is something that they're just approaching because of the change in the economic climate. You know, what happened for 5 years was everybody was kind of sitting solid on what they had. If they had vacancies, they had vacancies. It was an offset to other income properties. It's just now that they're taking a look at opportunities, and you know, Wheat Ridge is my go-to example. They tend to try to create mixed-use development where there hasn't been that before, because with the rooftops comes the feed to the retail.
One thing I might add is I do know the city of Lakewood, one thing they did from a zoning standpoint is they opened up a lot of those allowed uses that right now we're pretty segmented, and they were. Here's B1, this is to just address the 1 mile radius. B2, you widen that radius and you only allow uses that kind of address those neighborhood wide. And one thing they've done is kind of opened that up. And so a lot of the existing commercial shopping centers now allow mixed use, whereas here we'd have to rezone that. And that's one way I think of hitting that trend is not compartmentalizing all the land uses like most cities have done over the past 50 years, but allowing a lot more flexibility from uses, for uses in those centers.
And I was part of the comprehensive plan development for the city of Wheat Ridge, and that was one of the things that we really paid attention to was how do we expand those uses for those properties. And so they had height and density in their charter, so we were able to get that changed so that there was more flexibility with height and density.
Board members have talked about some overall things that can be done that would take some time to develop, information that can be used in the future. I'm looking at maybe some short-term things that you can help us with that wouldn't take a tremendous amount of effort and really no money. And that is one of them being if we get a packet for a hearing, the packet contains referral agency comments, Denver Public Schools, the engineering staff here in Littleton, Denver Water, et cetera, et cetera. It sure be nice, and I'd find it most informative if economic development would be a referral agency and give us an opinion.
Good suggestion.
Second.
Well, Glenn and I work together on all of this, and we're certainly willing to add that information.
We expect it then in December when we will be hearing a case for a large development, redevelopment.
I will add, Board Member Graham was asking, do we ever do a little bit more detailed analysis of a particular site? And the only one I'm familiar with is on that site. The city did contract with a commercial viability company. Now it's about 10 years old, but they looked at the site 10 years ago and said...
The center hasn't changed in 40 years.
It has not changed much since then, but we'll certainly provide that to you. But that's the only example I know of where we kind of delved in detail on a particular site.
But there's that. There's also a current analysis and a current opinion, as, again, part of referral agency comments.
The way the hearings have been going is they've hired some outside economic expert who comes in and pontificates, and we're supposed to believe him because he has big degrees. but yet there's never any proof behind it, nor is there a rebuttal opinion. I think of a building appraiser. The buyer wants the lowest possible appraised value, the seller wants the highest possible appraised value, and in the middle is the truth. We seem to be getting the buyer's opinion, we don't seem to be getting the seller's opinion. So we don't seem to be getting a really solid foundation of this is why it is of maximum importance that this gets done. We tend to hear that only from the one who has the project.
We do analyze it. Similar to a traffic impact study, we don't go out on a limb and say we looked at everything, but we do actually look at every traffic impact study. And if we disagree, we tell them and they make modifications. And it's really the same way with their economic analysis. Now, on the one particular case, they came in right before council with an additional study. I'm thinking of the Platte Canyon site. So that was probably an exception that Denise didn't really have a chance to weigh in on that particular report, but I don't think we disagreed at the end of the day.
Took a look at their information, and ours was fairly consistent with theirs.
I guess we're saying be more bold. Have a stronger opinion, have a more prominent opinion in the studies. Don't bury it, because obviously if economic viability is where we're trying to make sure our city, well, one of the things we're trying to make sure our city has, let's not be shy about the opinions that we have that support that premise.
If I were a developer and I just was listening to the last 2 minutes, I would say, okay, I'm going to spring a last minute piece of information, therefore giving city no time to analyze it, no time for referral agency comments, and it just sails through without analysis. So do we have a cutoff point where all material shall be submitted 15, 20 days before a hearing? If not, maybe we should have that. I'm telling you how to do your business, sorry. Okay.
Sorry to bother you, but nice. Thank you for coming. Appreciate the chance
You're
to badger
welcome.
you with
Thanks
questions.
for giving me the time.
I do have concerns about if we have 7 underperforming centers right now, what happens if we're wrong? And Aspen Grove is having some challenge with some of its tenants, and I don't think we're going to wind up there, but we run a potential of having yet another underperforming shopping center. What are we doing to kind of buffer ourselves if indeed we're competing with South Glen and Park Meadows and all the rest of that? What are we buffering ourselves to make sure what we got works?
Well, actually, we're having a meeting with DDR and Aspen Grove this week, but a lot of it is out of our hands. The larger shopping centers have a whole leasing unit. We're reaching out to try and find out when people's leases are up or what might be happening, but they can or may not tell us what's going on. And we don't necessarily have a lot of control over that. They have resources to attract bigger retailers way beyond what we have, and we just make ourselves known that we're there and available to give them information when we can. But finding out those kinds of critical things when leases expired and all that, that's again a process. You have to build a trust with the property owners and the property managers to get them to see why you're asking for that and what you might be able to do to help if you have that information. And it's challenging, but I think we're making progress.
If a business wanted to move to Littleton today and they called the city of Littleton, what would their experience be?
They would probably pass them along to our department, and we would try to set up a meeting with them so that we could review their plan and talk about what resources we could have at their disposal. And that's invariably a good experience for people. We have a lot of what our department calls love letters, a lot of feedback from new businesses or businesses that are looking to relocate and the help that we've given them. So,
have you set any goals, or how would we measure success of this plan? Like, when do we know?
in terms of like a retail strategy that we're working on,
Yeah.
I would say it would probably take a year to 18 months to kind of get a feel for what might happen realistically. We can give you much more immediate information on who, we can't tell you specifically who we work with because of confidentiality, but we have a measurement system where all of our contacts are added into our database, and then the outputs say we work with this many new businesses, we answered this many site selections, so you can, at any given month, you can see exactly what we've been working on.
So you have some indicators to say, okay, we're progressing.
Yes.
We may not have achieved X or Y, but we're moving towards,
Yes.
we're at least moving in the right direction.
And with that database, we could take a look on a semi-annual basis of how many businesses are still operating, so we know what our retention rates are.
Anything else? No? Okay.
Please visit again.
Yeah.
Thank you,
There's
Denise.
more we can engage with you.
What
It
would,
makes the world go round.
what would be a next opportunity? Like, is there some other step that's happening, or when would be another good kind of checkpoint?
Well, I can just make sure that I let Glenn know what's happening with what we're doing. An example would be I plan tomorrow to make some site visits for something we've suggested might fill an upcoming commercial space, and I can certainly let Glenn know if we had any interest in what we're suggesting. We don't proselytize businesses from other areas. It's unethical, but what we will do is find good potential independently owned businesses and ask them if they'd like to look at opening a second or third location in this area, and we have information on where they might land that would work for them. So we can let you know what happens with that.
Sorry, another question comes to mind. Have we set certain criteria around, so other than businesses within the community now that we say open up a second location, I don't know if that's what you were suggesting, but how do we, knowing what our limitations are, but also knowing what our assets are as a city, how do we identify what types of businesses may do well in Littleton, and how do we go kind of outside of our region, maybe kind of beyond our walls to find some of those types of businesses?
Well, there's actually information, and I believe it's through the SBA, that talks about, based on population and other demographic markers, how many businesses of a particular kind are sustainable in your community. So we could take a look at that and then compare that to the number of businesses that we have. It would give us not just a retail picture, but a saturation or a leakage factor for services as well.
That's well and good and nice and dry and something a CPA or a lawyer would put together. Do you ever go around and ask Littletonites what they would like? I know our Inspire Littleton, maybe we asked it, we get some pie in the sky things, but we can expand upon that and really delve into what is the demand here in Littleton? Do we know from the citizens, not from public studies or something?
Just speaking as a former retailer and service provider, I had a lot of people say, gee, if you just offered this additional service or you just offered this product, we would be in here all the time. And I've seen this happen in Golden. Golden actually reached out to its citizens. What kind of businesses would you like to see in our redevelopment of Washington and the side streets? Gee, we'd love a little boutique bookstore. Well, a bookstore opened and it closed. So I don't mean to offend. It's just that I think that you've got to take that and weigh it against what statistically is sustainable in a community.
It's obviously a blend of.
Yes. Yes.
You mentioned it's unethical to recruit businesses from other municipalities. I gather that's just a code of conduct. What's wrong with promoting ourselves as come to Littleton? We have all these assets. This could work out really well for you. What's wrong with sending flyers up to the Highlands or places where people or Wash Park or Parker or Sedalia to say, come here?
Nothing at all. And we're actually looking at how we expand our marketing and communications. And we're trying to be very strategic about that. We're looking to certain experts to how do we have consistent messaging? And we're talking to stakeholders. We're talking to Hudson Gardens, and we're talking to historic downtown merchants. We are moving ahead with that kind of marketing message. What I was speaking to is specifically if I were to go into Arvada and there's a business there and I'd say, why don't you leave your current location and come to Littleton? There's no problem with me saying, how about a second location in this great place here? There's no problem with that. They just don't want you to go and seek to remove that business from their area.
They meaning the other municipality?
Economic developers, they actually have a code of ethics, and it prohibits you from direct solicitation.
No fun in that.
Within how many miles? Within how many miles, you know?
At all.
Oh, so you can't go to Arizona and poach someone?
You can market your city anywhere you want, and that's the artistry of it. You market your city. Tom Clark of Denver Metro EDC did Coloradoans love California, and on the surface it was a total violation of what you normally do. But he did not directly solicit to any specific business. He just sent out Valentines to all these businesses in California, and it got them looking. But he didn't go to any specific business and say, leave California and come to Colorado.
And actually, if somebody is looking, aren't we supposed to tell their staff?
Correct.
If somebody
Yes.
from another
So
city.
if Enstrom's is leaving Arvada and wants to come to Littleton, then I need to call their economic development staff and give them the opportunity to retain that business.
Good grief.
Wow.
What year is this? That's
Well, think of
very
it from our
nice.
perspective. What if we had a great business, and we have plenty of them, and somebody came and tried to
That's what you
pluck
were
them?
saying. That's our responsibility on retention, making sure we're kissing them and all that other stuff so that.
But if somebody comes in from another jurisdiction and says, we'll give you a year's rent free, Streets of South Glen, for instance, and I'm not casting any dispersions, but let's say they were able to do that. We'll give you a prime spot to leave here to come to South Glen. It's just, you have to be careful about how you do it. And there are ways to let businesses know that this is a great place to be, but you just can't go in and try to deliberately pluck them out of another community.
Well, I think you've presented some really great plans, some great thinking, so looking forward to having you here and that you're here helping us out.
Thank you.
One of the things I wanted to maybe tag on, under the next subject, talking about the comp plan, I wanted to update you on what we've done as far as we've requested grant funds through Dr. Cog to look at the areas around 2 of our light rail stations. And then also in our comprehensive plan, we talked about corridor studies. We talked about Santa Fe corridor is important and Littleton Boulevard corridor. And we actually got approval of those grants and also the matching funds. At least council has tentatively given us approval in our budget to match those grants. So we'll have some serious dollars to look at those 2 corridors because they lead right into and out of those light rail stations. So one of the things that Dr. Cog wants to look at is not only the development of the area around the light rail stations, but how do you get there and how do you go to work from there? So I think we can actually be able to contract out a good portion of what our future work plan would be on those corridor studies, at least for Littleton and Santa Fe. So,
What do you mean by contract out to outside help is what you're asking for?
Right, outside help. Yeah, we're trying to keep up with the current projects going through, and what we have approval for is $75,000 to study the mineral station and $125,000 for the downtown. And as you might remember from the downtown neighborhood plan, there were a number of things it said we needed to do next, including parking. How do we solve the parking issue downtown? How do we deal with wayfinding? How do people get find out where the businesses are? So that's why that's kind of a bigger number, because it's a bigger job. So
I assume you're going to dust off the study that was done by the Urban Land Institute for the mineral station.
Yep.
It had value.
It did have value.
Quite shocking and breathtaking in its scope, but it has
Right.
value.
Yeah, in fact, RTD is talking to ULI again about some of their sites. One of them is that mineral station, so next couple of weeks, I'm going to sit down with RTD and ULI to see the next stage of what could happen at that site. So, yeah.
How does the economic plan relate to the comp plan structure?
Yeah, that's a good question. You know, economic development is not really something that's normally part of a comprehensive plan. Doesn't mean it can't, but usually it's more the implementation arm. So it's kind of that policy that sits out there with the other ways you implement a comprehensive plan. It's more of a strategic plan, so it's a little bit shorter term, and as you can see, it's a lot more nuts and bolts. So there, I think most communities don't necessarily say the economic plan is a part of the comp plan, but it's a way of implementing it.
I think there are certain tenets in here that would be very relevant to review against in a rezoning of a block. And just going through it, you know, there's tenets here that are written much like policy. And if approved, my assumption is it is a policy of the city that we are attempting to do these things. Is that a safe assumption?
Right, but again, getting back to the rezoning and what our code states, you use that comprehensive plan. You zone consistent with the comprehensive plan, and if that's not a part of the comprehensive plan, it's good information, but it's not something where you have to drop the gavel on. It's consistent with the economic plan.
I would have, what I'm supposed to say, I would assert that it should be included as a subchapter about general city things that need to be considered in the overall intent of any development.
Mm-hmm. Or you could have simply a statement in your comprehensive plan that economic development is important as identified in policies from time to time or something.
I think we did.
We keep running into problems, though, of Littleton Boulevard corridor study. Is it the law? Is it a suggestion? Is it a nice to have? It's very ambiguous. And so as we sit on a precipice of trying to launch a comprehensive plan, I think we should say what it is and then accept what it's not instead of finding ourselves caught here.
Right. Yeah, and that was an issue of the city council chose not to make that part of the comprehensive plan. So that's why it became semi-ambiguous.
Littleton Boulevard corridor study or the economic plan?
The Littleton Boulevard study.
Did the city council choose to make this an official City of Littleton document?
An official City of Littleton document? Yes.
Worthy of review by a planning board of what our goals and intentions are.
I missed the second part.
Can we review it relevant to a case and use it as information to support it?
I don't think they stated that, no.
Mm-mm.
It was really, I think it was really meant to be the council's direction kind of for staff as far as how we do economic development. But if the board feels that it should be part of the comprehensive plan, then that would be your recommendation.
Talk about that. So economic viability and development comes up a lot, and I believe it was a part of our comp plan. I think it was one of the sections. Maybe we should relook at it now and in light of this and determine how we just make it stronger and maybe use this as a reference document. I think we could talk about that in one of our study sessions. Going back to the studies that we're going to contract out or get some outside help, what's the timing around that? Is that a 2013 or 2014?
Yeah, downtown's a 2014, and the mineral station is a 2015. That's when they will give those funds to us.
Well, adding to that, though, if we are doing those corridor studies as part of our study sessions, and those are, you know, significant chunks of those corridors, wouldn't we want to dovetail the two together? I mean, the sequence is that we're going to do the comprehensive plan, and then we're doing corridor plan, and neighborhood plans fold into that, and then we have corridor plans which append onto it as well in order to make it a complete document, but you wouldn't want to do one without the other.
Yeah. In an ideal world, yeah, we would do it all at once. These are federal funds, so we are kind of tied to their timeline as well.
I think it's more a matter of time, too. It's
Yeah.
now the time to do it all at once can't be done.
Well, that's true, and these will be fairly detailed, and you talked about outreach to stakeholders. That will be a big part of it, which makes it probably a year process, I would say, for one corridor study.
Another one of my axioms is whatever time planning staff gives us, double it, and we'll be close.
2 years.
Thank you.
As far as the process going forward, we are working hard to get the final graphic form of what the comprehensive plan looks like. We're not there yet. We expect it to be this week. So what our plan is, we get that out on the website and we notify as many people as we possibly can that we have a very close to the final draft as far as the citywide portion of the comprehensive plan. I did get comments from Board Member Graham, and they were good ones. Some of them were pretty technical, and I think we can make those changes. But if you have other changes as far as the overall wording of the citywide plan, what I'd like to do is suggest you hold that to the public hearing. And I think what I'd like to suggest is we look at October 14th for a public hearing on possible adoption of the citywide goals of the comprehensive plan.
I disagree with some of the holding back here. We've edited the main part of the document 6 or 7 times. We have not had a chance to edit the introduction, the first 4 or 5 pages. When I looked at it, quite frankly, it's stiff, bad sentence structure. I had my editor wife do some editing without changing the content or the intent, but just put the sentences together correctly and legibly. And I would like, and I've got 5 copies if anybody's interested in looking at it, but I wanted to give you a copy to hand over to Dennis. We've got to do something with this introduction. It is not acceptable. Not acceptable to go to public in October.
I didn't realize you didn't see the intro. Was that something we added on at the?
Yeah, this the first few pages. We've never seen that.
Okay.
Up until we got this a month ago or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's pretty straightforward. It's
right.
nothing spectacular. It's just a better way to put it together so it reads better.
Well, and my concern was if there is something that we've gone through the 6 or 7 reiterations, I don't want to change it without it being out there in the public, I guess.
We beat it to death, I think, the main
if
part
the
of the
intro,
document.
if nobody, that really hasn't, that's just something we put together, then yeah, absolutely. We'll have at it.
Well, give
we
it
can
to
make it better.
Here. Anybody else?
And then I think you have some flexibility. If October 14th you want additional time, we could go perhaps to a special meeting on the 21st or go back to your regular meeting on the 28th. I think we have enough open time now that we can get it right and pass on a good recommendation to City Council.
So are we meeting before, when's our next meeting? October? So October 14th will be the next meeting.
Right.
So he's proposing, do we just go with it, or do we want to look at it one more time?
We will definitely, if we have it ready, we will get it out in the public realm this week. If it goes beyond this week, quite frankly, we'd probably want to push the date just to allow folks out in the community a good chance to look at it.
What is the revision process? So we do the public hearing. Is there a secondary revision process that we go through?
If that's up to you. Right. You can certainly do that. You could make a list of recommended changes, and that's part of your motion to recommend approval to council. Or you can continue your hearing unto another date, and it's kind of your process from there.
I'd like to be in an opinion, in a position, I can't talk that we're totally content as a board with what we put forth to the general public. And I am not in favor of holding off on changes until we personally, without reservation, think this is our best foot forward. That said, I'm all for moving this thing forward.
Yeah.
But I want to make sure it's the right work.
Is that the fence you're standing on?
No, at the moment, I'd like to see the changes in there, and I don't want to feel pushed to put forward a paper that I'm not ready to turn in yet.
So if we, I haven't reviewed what you sent last week, so if we had changes, would all these, so whatever changes come from the board from now until October 14th, we wouldn't have the opportunity to make any changes, right?
Well, what I was just suggesting, because you haven't seen the introduction, and I thought perhaps you did, but I missed a couple meetings there. If you haven't seen the introduction, then I think you give us comments and we'll meld it into, hopefully, and get it back to you and have you review that. I guess I don't want to keep holding on to the draft, I guess, of the portion that you've seen a half a dozen times, and I think we're set on the wording of it.
We're looking at 3 pages of, minus the photos and the chart. It's 3 pages. It's nothing.
Yeah.
It can be edited. You can send it out via email. Got any more comments? We don't need a special study session for it. It's just 3 pages.
I think we can do this electronically if you give us something within the week.
Okay.
And what preparation, if any, do we need to make or have ready for the public hearing?
Oh, I think staff would do a quick presentation, and then you open it like you would any other hearing.
Okay.
And take comments, and then we can record those, and you can decide if you want to make changes after that. You could maybe close the hearing and come back at another meeting to go over all the different changes.
So the changes that we would get, or the input we'd get from the public, we would consider that input and then determine what, if any, changes we would make. Would we make that during kind of a public hearing, so we would do it on the spot, or a secondary hearing, or would that be done in a study session?
No, you'd probably do it in the hearing, and you could certainly do it that night and go through just like you would with any kind of zoning change, really.
Okay.
Decide if you want to make changes. You can, formulate a recommendation with possible changes, and then we would make the changes before it went to council.
So, you guys have any thoughts or comments or opinions? So if we're really just focusing on the introduction, sounds like, Mark, you've already taken a stab at just cleaning up some things. Maybe we just do this via email for over the next week.
Okay.
Take a look at it.
These are just benign, simple edits.
Okay. Then I think we aim for October 14th. Everyone okay with that?
Excellent.
Great.
That's it from me.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn?
Second. All in favor?
No discussion?
No discussion. I'm consistently no discussion. No, sorry. The vote.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, Kurt wants to keep going on.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.